Good day, everyone. I am Anthony M. Zureta, and I would be reporting all about the problems with school system in relation to online and offline mode of learning and education with special need in times of pandemic. Learning objective. At the end of this topic, the participants will be able to describe the current educational system in the time of pandemic, define and understand the different modalities of distance learning, online, offline learning, advantages and disadvantages. The participants will be able to know how COVID-19 has affected special education students. And lastly, to determine the students with disabilities and distance learning key points. Education in time of pandemic. Educational crisis. DepEd announced suspended of classes early March. And now we are preparing for particular event, especially at the opening of the classes. According of the Commonwealth of Learning, 90% student population actually affected at around the globe. The whole Philippines experiencing educational crisis. The reason of educational crisis in the Philippines encountered are COVID-19 pandemic, conflict of floods and fires, or some other disasters that can cause to our educational crisis difficult. But DepEd are not surrendered to have a plan for learning continuity plan. The Department of Education recommendation under its learning continuity plan for 2020 to 2021. There are five, which is distance learning, second, blended learning, third, homeschooling, and fourth, apprenticeship, and last will be face-to-face. The DepEd proposed educational system is blended learning. Some school in the Philippines, they are using blended learning or online learning, and last will be modular learning. They are using of techniques and strategy to deliver their lesson through television and radio broadcast for the quality, equitable learning of their students. That is how the DepEd plan that our student being active and being educated during pandemic. Now, we have in the option modalities or the common modalities that our school in the Philippines are implemented, which are the online learning, blended learning, and the distance learning. Online education versus offline education. Online education is a very flexible learning system that allows students to study solely via the internet on their own computer or their own any gadgets at home or wherever they see fit. Basically, student-teacher face-to-face meetings are not required for this online, allowing students to study anywhere in the world. I will give you a few pieces of advice for organizing online classes. 1. Don't stretch out the introduction. 2. Make use of transition between topics and summarize the materials. Use more examples and cases. Add more tasks and interactivity. Avoid off-topic questions and discussions. Don't ignore your students' questions, but also don't interrupt yourself by reacting to every comment. And lastly, don't overdo amount of information you convey and tests you give. Now, let's proceed to offline education, also referred to as traditional training. Offline education means a student needs to go in a school, in a classroom, and attend a class face to face with a teacher. Offline learning is implementing modular approach on the current education system right now. What are the difference between online and offline learning? The first is the location of the learning process, where the online is in at home while the offline is in the school. Another key difference between online versus offline learning is the flexibility of the classes. And the third difference between online learning versus offline learning is the student-teacher interaction. Now let's proceed to the disadvantages and advantages of online. The benefits of online education are location doesn't matter, flexible hours, time saving, cheaper, convenient, and class recorded. In online benefits, education in online learning has no geographical barriers. It saves time of the learners. Distance student can easily avail education. Online learning is not expensive. Student can take the help and use resources anytime. How about the disadvantages of online education? Disadvantages are isolating, no competition of the students to students, no interpersonal skill development to students or student to teacher. Limited topics must have self discipline. There is no relation of pupil teacher student has learned alone. The concept cannot be understood without the help of interaction. Internet packages nowadays are so costly. Slow internet speed is the biggest failure of online learning. Classroom interaction is missing. Online limited content is given on internet. Everyone is not able to run internet. Rural people or students cannot access computers. And last, online learning required smartphone or any gadgets which cannot be afforded by everyone. That is the online education disadvantages in learning. Now, let's proceed to the offline education. The offline or individualized mentoring, structured and disciplined sitting by implemented by the teacher, the rules and regulation in the classroom or in school, face-to-face interaction by the students to students and students to teacher, interpersonal skills development, and last, the competitive atmosphere. While the disadvantage of offline education are fixed location, fixed schedule. You cannot be late because there is a fixed schedule. Study materials, dependency on the teacher, and last, transport and accommodation. That is how the offline education advantages and disadvantages. Now we have proceed to the options, modalities, or the common use of our school in the Philippines in learning. There are three, which is online learning, blended learning, and distance learning. Online learning, there are asynchronous, synchronous, and asynchronous, or called as hybrid. First I will discuss is asynchronous. Asynchronous, no regular real-time class schedule for any of the essential topic. In asynchronous, essential topic materials are uploaded through a learning management system. Communications are posted and interaction between teacher and students or among students are done through learning management system. And last, the asynchronous, student learn the essential topics materials at any time, at any place. How about the synchronous? Synchronous has regular real-time class schedule for all essential topics via web-based meeting tools. Essential topics in asynchronous materials are discussed in real time by the teacher to the class through via web-based meeting tools. In synchronous learning is the communication and interaction between teacher and students or among students are done mostly via web-based tools. The synchronous posting of communication and course materials can be also done in the learning management system. The students learn in synchronous the essential topics, materials of an essential topic of an scheduled real-time session. However, students may review the materials when uploaded in a learning management system. How about the asynchronous or called as hybrid? This is the combination of synchronous learning plus synchronous learning. Hybrid, this learning has regular real-time class schedule via web-based meeting tools for identified essential topics. Hybrid learning is some essential topics materials are discussed in real-time session by the teacher to the class while other materials are accessed by students at any time and any place. In hybrid learning, communication interaction between teacher and students or among students are done either in real-time session or in the learning management system. In hybrid learning, students learn the essential topics, materials either in real-time session with the class or by accessing individually the uploaded materials in the learning management system. Proceed to the distance learning. What is distance learning? Now, freeware online asynchronous access of learning materials plus more remote offline access of learning materials. Distance learning suited to students with poor or no internet connectivity or no internet connection. Distance learning has either minimal or no regular time. Class scheduled via web-based meeting as most of, if not all, the essential topics are scheduled by module. In distance learning, essential topic materials are mostly taught through modules that are either mailed to the students by the teacher or school or are personally picked up by students from the school. In distance learning communication, the interaction between teacher and students or among students are done either through phones, by calling, or other forms of internet dependent communication tools. Distance learning, students learn the essential topics materials mostly through modules that are mailed to them by teacher or school or that are personally picked up by them from the school. That is how distance learning process. Now, let's proceed to the blended learning. Blended learning where online asynchronous access of learning in most cases plus in-person sessions. Blended learning suited to students with poor or no internet connectivity. In blended learning has mostly have regular in-person on campus class schedule for the essential topics. In essential topics in blended learning, materials are mostly taught in person on campus. While the blended learning communication and interaction between teacher and students or among students are done mostly in person on campus. In blended learning, students learn the essential topics materials mostly through in-person on campus sessions. That is how blended learning works in learning to our students. We are done from the common options modalities. Now, let's proceed to the how COVID-19 has affected special education students. One is special education under new normal. Under its inclusive education policy, DepEd assured that the unique circumstances of learners with exceptionalities are included in its learning continuity plan and funds are also allocated to address their needs, especially in education. With inclusivity in mind, DepEd said that learners with special needs will also be provided with self-learning modules as alternative learning delivery modalities will be offered for various types of learners across the Philippines. DepEd said that the integration of self-learning modules with the alternative learning delivery modalities such as modular, television-based, radio-based, interaction, blended, and online will help the agency to ensure that all learners have access to quality basic education for school year 2020 to 2021 with face-to-face classes prohibited due to current public health situation. There are some regions in the Philippines, the learners with special needs will have video sessions as well as assigned teachers that will be guiding them throughout their lessons. The activities we place in the self-learning modules will be appropriate for learners with special needs. We still have to give these learners the same kind of care that we gave them while we were doing face-to-face classes, but most of them would be using videotape lesson aside from the modules. For kids in special education, learners with special education needs require face-to-face interaction but are vulnerable to the coronavirus disease. Parents and teachers have no choice but to make distance learning work. According to DepEd Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan, face-to-face interaction for learners with disabilities would be allowed in very low-risk area, some as geographically isolated, disadvantaged, and conflict-affected areas with no history of COVID-19 infection. It's not just paper and pencil, it's integrated in home routines. In cooking, for example, we incorporated functional math and reading a recipe, measurement, and procedure. Those are the some way on how our students learn. It is very important to have good communication with parents and learners with special needs. You must get their trust. They must feel that you are really bound or should really have good intentions to help. Establishing trust will make it easier for them to understand the programs or plans of the school for their children. And last is routines interrupted. Most students have had routines interrupted. The children perhaps most affected by the disruption are special education students. Generally speaking, in special education, one of the strategies that works the best is structured routines. But now that's gone. Somebody said parents of special need children have struggled through a trial and error process to find what works and what doesn't to encourage their children to engage with virtual education and or in-person education that looks much different than it did before COVID-19. Nowadays, it's another hat for parents to wear. They have become the school, the teachers, the lunch monitor, the school nurse, the recess monitor, and now they're also becoming the researcher as they try out different routines. I think having to play these many different roles has been incredibly stressful for parents. That is how our parents is big challenge and give them efforts and more patient to their child. Those are the effects and how affected our special education students. The federal guidance does provide flexibility. However, it does not specify methodologies. As appropriate, special education and related services can be provided through distance instruction, virtually, online, or telephonically. Certain services to some students may be provided in person if feasible and safe. Last, utilization of disability-related modifications, closed captioning, embedded sign language, and education, and etc. IEP teams are encouraged to employ virtual platforms to collaborate creatively to support students adding practices such as teletherapy, online options for data tracking and documentations, and last, meetings on digital platforms. Special education covers a range of needs, from children who could use a little help with reading to children with visual or hearing impairments to children with multiple disabilities. Special education students have individual education plan or IEPs, which are special education covers a range of needs from children who could use a little help with reading to children with visual or hearing impairments to children with multiple disabilities. Special education students have individual education plans or IEPs, which are legal contracts between school and parents that set goals for the child and outline the special education services to be provided. Individual education program or plan is a basic requirement for schools creating to children with special needs. The IEP is a written plan that specifies the student academic goals and the method to obtain these goals. We need to prepare and be strong enough to face the challenges and struggle for the better of our youth in our society. We can do it and we can do our best to our students. This is the end of my report. I am Anthony M. Zureta signing off. Thank you and mabuhay to everyone.